Welcome to today's Explainer. So we've got a truly beautiful story to dive into today. We're going to follow a couple, Mark and Sarah, on a completely transformative, life-changing trip to Thailand. And as we retrace their steps, we're going to pick up some incredible lessons about life, travel, and, genuine human connection along the way. I'll be speaking nice and clearly for you, so just sit back and let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. What actually happens when you let go of control? I mean, it's totally human nature to want to manage every single detail of our lives, right? We plan, we worry, we try to predict exactly what's coming next. But how do we change when we finally just stop? When we toss out our perfectly organized schedules and just let life happen? Well, that is exactly the question Mark and Sarah had to answer for themselves.
So, Section 1. Planning the framework. Preparing for the unknown.
You see, a huge, life-changing adventure across the globe doesn't actually start on the airplane. It starts weeks before you ever set foot in an airport, usually right at your own dining room table, and it often boils down to a choice between two totally different ways of traveling. Now, a rigid schedule means booking daily guided tours, writing out strict itineraries, and honestly, ending up feeling a bit trapped by your own master plan. Mark and Sarah, they definitely didn't want that. Instead, they went with what we'll call a flexible framework. They picked just three main anchor points: Bangkok, Chiang Mai, and Phuket. They chose to figure things out as they went, intentionally leaving big, empty spaces in their days just to explore. They wanted a plan, sure, but they absolutely did not want to be trapped by it.
To prepare for all that unknown, they took three super simple, practical steps. First, Sarah downloaded offline maps and translation apps so they wouldn't get completely lost. Second, Mark tackled the boring but essential stuff like travel insurance and banking. And step 3, which is probably the biggest game changer, they packed incredibly light. Literally just one small suitcase and a carry-on bag for each of them. They adopted this really smart philosophy. Too much stuff only makes things harder. Sarah actually left her favorite dresses behind, and Mark brought his oldest sneakers. Basically, they were ready for absolutely anything.
Moving on to Section 2. Arriving at Suvarnabhumi Airport. First steps in a new world. Okay, imagine this. You've been flying for nearly 20 long, exhausting hours. You're physically drained. You stumble out into the arrival hall in Bangkok, and suddenly, everything is different. The air is warm, it's heavy, and it has this slightly sweet smell to it. In that exact moment, standing in a brand new country with no tour guide to hold your hand, Sarah had this crucial realization. Internet is survival. Getting connected to the internet is literally the fastest way to relieve your travel anxiety. It's the bridge between feeling totally lost and feeling capable.
So, to keep from panicking in this busy, glowing metropolis, they laser-focused on three immediate survival tasks. First up, they made a beeline to a counter to grab a local SIM card. The second her phone showed a signal, Sarah literally felt her shoulders drop. Instant relief. Second, they exchanged just a tiny bit of cash, just enough to get through day one. And third, they tracked down the official taxi line to safely get to their room. Checking off these basic step-by-step actions really helped keep them calm in what was a pretty wild, bright, and loud environment.
Which brings us to Section 3. Wat Po and True Respect. Learning to slow down.
Let's shift gears and slow down our tone here for a moment. A few days into their trip, they visited the famous Wat Pho temple, and it taught them a truly profound lesson about presence. And by presence, we mean being fully in the current moment, observing and listening without feeling this constant need to capture or control the experience. When Sarah first walked into the beautiful temple grounds, her immediate instinct was to whip out her phone and photograph every single thing. But then, she stopped. She lowered her camera. She realized she didn't actually need to take the moment home with her in a photo. She just needed to be present.
And this highlighted a really deep lesson for them. In lots of Western cultures, we're kind of taught that our personal comfort and convenience always come first. But true respect, sometimes that means showing restraint. While they were at the temple, Mark and Sarah watched a tourist accidentally step a bit too close to a sacred prayer area. A temple staff member came over and gently corrected the tourist, but there was absolutely no anger, no shaming. It was just calm, peaceful guidance. Sarah realized right then that being quiet, mindful, and present is so much more respectful than snapping a photo just to prove to everyone that you were there.
And this brilliantly illustrates a fascinating cultural contrast. What we might call the American habit is often fast, hyper-efficient, and very goal-oriented. We move quickly to check items off a to-do list, right? But the temple habit they witnessed was a whole different world.
It was slow, it was calm, people moved with deep purpose and actually took the time to truly listen. It served as this beautiful reminder that we just don't always have to be rushing around. All right, Section 4, Trusting the Street Food, Letting Go of the Rules.
Now we're jumping into arguably the most exciting part of their cultural immersion. Picture this. It's a busy, humid night in Bangkok. Smoke is billowing up from street grills, pans are sizzling with hot oil, and motorbikes are just buzzing right past you. It's dinner time. Which brings up a pretty vital question. How on earth do you order food without a menu? Back home, we lean heavily on clear rules. We read a menu, we know the exact ingredients, and we know exactly what we're going to get. But Mark and Sarah found themselves staring at a tiny food stall with 0 English signs and absolutely no menus. So, how did they survive?
Well, it all comes down to control versus trust. Control is what we are super used to. Clear rules, reading the menu, total predictability, and finding our safety in strict systems. But without a menu or even a shared language, Mark and Sarah just had to rely on trust. They squeezed in shoulder to shoulder with locals on these tiny plastic stools. To order, they just pointed at whatever looked good on the grill, smiled, nodded, and fully participated in the moment. They willingly gave up control, and they chose trust instead.
And as they dug into these incredibly spicy noodles, and then later this warm, sweet coconut dessert, they had a magical realization. Trust didn't come from rigid systems. It came from participation. They literally had no idea what the exact name of the dish was, but it was absolutely delicious. They learned firsthand that you just do not need to understand every single little detail to safely enjoy an experience. You don't need to know everything to feel safe. You really just need to learn to live exactly where your feet are. And that perfectly sums up the beautiful internal shift that happened for Mark and Sarah. At the start of their trip, they were constantly scanning the horizon, looking for problems, trying to manage everything. But by sitting on those cheap plastic stools, eating mystery food, they finally let go of control. They learned to just exist in the moment, exactly where their feet were planted.
As we wrap up our explainer today, I really want to leave you with a final, thought-provoking question. When was the very last time you stepped completely outside your comfort zone? Like, when was the last time you just tossed out your plans, stopped trying to micromanage everything, and genuinely trusted the world around you? Mark and Sarah's journey is proof that sometimes the absolute best experiences happen when we just embrace the unknown. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep learning, keep trusting, and I will see you next time.